The college football playoff is here, plus WNBA players authorize a strike. Front Office Sports Today starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today, your look inside the stories shaping the business and culture of sports. I'm Baker Machado here at FOS Studios in New York City, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. Changing the game has always been our game. You can access NASDAQ 100 companies in just one ETF, Invesco Distributors, Inc. All right, we have a very big show ahead, so let's start with a big weekend in college football in our main event. Well, the college football playoff is here, as Friday night's first round gives us a prime SEC rematch. But could this actually be Kalen DeBoer's last game at Alabama? Plus the two Group of 5 schools, as they enjoy their moment in the spotlight, like James Madison and Tulane, they can't keep up with the merch demand from their fans. But the games once again go up against the NFL, so could that damper the ratings? So to preview the first round, let's bring in FOS reporter David Rumsey. David, good to see you as always. Let's start with Friday's game, Alabama and Oklahoma. Literally a pick'em game right now. Is this the best game to kick off the playoff?
I think it's going to be an electric atmosphere at Oklahoma, their first appearance in this 12-team college football playoff. And we saw the home games last year really provide a lot of juice to those 4 home teams who actually won all those games last year, and everybody is favored here at home this weekend. But what a way to kick it off, a rematch of an SEC matchup earlier this season when the Sooners beat the Crimson Tide in Alabama. And of course, we have the drama surrounding Kalen DeBoer, which I'm sure you want to talk about because he keeps saying he's going to stay at Alabama, but there's still this tension of, could Michigan make him an offer he can't refuse?
Yeah, let's talk about that because, I mean, it's been very quiet on the Michigan coaching front right now. As you mentioned, Kalen DeBoer has emphatically said in statements that he wants to return to Tuscaloosa. But what happens if Alabama loses? Is he going to be in Ann Arbor this weekend?
It kind of reminds me of last year going into the first round. Ohio State was reeling after losing to Michigan again. They were hosting Tennessee at home. And kind of the vibe was, if Ohio State loses to Tennessee, they might fire Ryan Day. Of course, they blew Tennessee out, went on to win the college football playoff national championship. He got a contract extension, and here we are. They're primed to maybe win another national championship. So it really could depend on the field. Of course, if Alabama wins at Oklahoma, then they have another game to get ready for on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, and maybe Michigan just moves on from that point.
All right, and we should note the winner of this game goes on to face number 1 Indiana in the next round. Let's talk about the other game. We're calling this, actually, you're the one that gave me the idea for this, the Notre Dame Bowl. This is Miami and A&M. A&M, by the way, a 3.5-point favor in this. The winner plays number 2 Ohio State. This also seems like a pretty good matchup also.
For sure, and this is, I've been saying, is going to be the most electric atmosphere of all the 4 games this weekend because, as we know, Kyle Field for Texas A&M, one of the strongest home field advantages in all of college football, maybe all of sports. 100,000 fans being packed in there for their first college football playoff appearance here. It's just going to be wild. And of course, Miami is a formidable opponent for Texas A&M. But keep in mind, the Aggies just lost 1 game all year in the SEC. They were leading that conference all year. Didn't get to play in the conference championship game, but a nice consolation prize to have this home game and, like you said, reach the second round, which they'll play Ohio State.
And then the 2 nightcap games bring in the 2 Group of 5 schools in Tulane and James Madison University. But we should note both of those teams heavy underdogs. I mean, right now, Ole Miss is a 17.5-point favorite over Tulane, and Oregon is a 20-point favorite over James Madison University. I mean, is there any stretch of the imagination that these 2 Cinderellas could actually bring an upset here?
I really don't think so. We already saw the Tulane-Ole Miss game earlier this year, and the Rebels won 45-7. Of course, that's when they had Lane Kiffin. He's no longer there, but most of the players are, and I don't think they'll have any problems. Same with Oregon, one of the best teams in the country, really, trying to get back to where they were last year when they were the number 1 overall seed, but lost their first game to Ohio State. And, I wrote a story this week about should there be a Group of 6, a playoff for their own national championship. Bowl season organizers, the executive director there, told me, hey, they would support that if the Group of 6 teams wanted to use some of the other bowl games to hold their own playoff. Nick Saban this week went on Pat McAfee's show and said that including Group of 6 teams is like letting AAA baseball teams play in the World Series. So there's a lot of opinions flying around out there, but the point spreads kind of speak for themselves. So we'll see what actually happens on the field.
Look, this is kind of similar to last year, at least on paper, where you have Boise State and Tennessee who got blown out in the first round last year. They had a lot of conversation afterwards, which was these two teams maybe shouldn't have been in there. Do you feel like we're going to have this sort of similar situation here, which only sort of exacerbates this conversation of expanding the college football playoff?
Certainly could. I mean, if we fast forward to Saturday night, Oregon, say they're theoretically blowing out JMU by 30 points, and people are saying, man, wouldn't it be awesome if Notre Dame was playing here instead of them? Wouldn't it be awesome if we had Texas in the playoff, or Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt? And maybe we can have it all, still keep a group of 5-6 team in there if we expand to 16, and then also get a few more teams. Because I agree, I mean, those teams, if we're talking about Texas, Notre Dame, even Vanderbilt, we're getting really hot at the end of the season. I know the records are what they are, but that would be really exciting to see some of those teams in there, and then we would have maybe potentially more home first-round playoff games.
And you also be excited for James Madison and Tulane enjoying their moment, obviously, in the Sun, and that's proving to be the case in the merch sales. They can't keep the merchandise on the racks right now.
Yeah, I spoke to a director of one of the campus stores at JMU this week who had been at the school and at the shop there since 1999, and he's seen a couple FCS titles for the Dukes, but he said this is a completely different animal because, of course, you don't know if you're going to make it back to the college football playoff. That's one of those group of 6 teams. Even if you win your conference, you're not guaranteed anything. You have to have a really good record and stack up against all the other group of 6 champions, and of course, we just got 2 this year because Duke caused chaos by winning the ACC as an unranked team. So, yeah, of course, soak it up. Tulane, James Madison fans, buy up that merch. Maybe you'll get another chance, but you got to commemorate this year for sure. So
what has the ticket demand been looking like for these games?
Baker, it's not as high as it was last year for the debut of first-round games on campuses. So last year, the big one was Indiana at Notre Dame, of course, in-state game there in Notre Dame, just a huge fan base, of course. They were the first game of the college football playoff last year on a Friday night. Of course, we had Curt Cignetti, who didn't have quite the cachet that he does this year, but he was, coming in like a bull into that game. Notre Dame won, but resale ticket prices for that game were over $900, nearly $1,000 in the days leading up to last year's first weekend of games. But this year, much, much lower. The most expensive game is the one I was talking about at Texas A&M with Miami coming to town. A little under $250 is the get-in price on the resale secondary ticket market, and a couple others are below $200, and then James Madison, Oregon, is under $100 if you want to get a resale ticket there. Keep in mind, the games are all sold out, so these are secondary prices we're talking about.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, obviously, the ratings for last year's college football playoff were pretty good, but the problem they had was they were going up against a couple NFL games on a Saturday night, which really brought down some of the ratings. Guess what? This happens again this weekend, and you're going up against a very important NFC North game of the Packers and the Bears on Saturday night. Is there concern that this is going to happen again this weekend where all of a sudden the ratings are not where they thought they would be?
There certainly is conflict, Baker, but there's been some strategic scheduling, if you will. So ABC, ESPN, which has all of the college football playoff media rights, they did sub-license 2 games to TNT Sports, but ABC and ESPN have kept the better games for themselves. Friday night, tonight's game, Oklahoma, Alabama, and then the noon game tomorrow, Miami, Texas A&M. Those 2 games we were talking about that are really close matchups. And then the ones involving group of 6 teams where the huge point spreads are, those are going to TNT Sports, and they're also facing the NFL competition that you mentioned. And last year, the NFL games kind of averaged almost double what the college football playoff games did. Of course, the ones that didn't go against NFL competition fared a lot better. So I think that will be the case again. But listen, the NFL has been playing games on this, mid to late Saturday date in December for years. So the college football playoff knew what they were getting into when they decided to schedule the first round on this weekend.
David, very quickly, with the 30 seconds we got left with you, will any of the higher seeds win this weekend? If there's one upset you could see happening, which one could it be?
Well, it would have to be Alabama at Oklahoma, like you said, basically a pick 'em, the 8-9 matchup. We see that all the time in the NCAA men's basketball, women's basketball tournament. That should be a close game, but I actually think all 4 home teams are going to win again. That's what I would bet on if I had to this week.
FOS reporter David Rumsey. David, thank you so much. We have a lot more Front Office Sports today headed your way right after this break. Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. I'm Baker Machado, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. In football, changing the game begins with rethinking it, like rethinking how players work on their game. And with wearable tech, advanced analytics, AI, and more, the same innovative thinking that changes the game could also change your portfolio. And Invesco QQQ gives you access to the innovators who are rethinking the world, so let's rethink possibility. Well, in their biggest step yet towards a potential work stoppage, WNBA players voted for their union to authorize a strike if necessary. This is their current deadline to come to terms on a new collective bargaining agreement with the league. All expires on January the 9th. So let's bring in FOS women's sports reporter Annie Costabile. So Annie, tell us what led to this.
Never a dull day, guys. Never a dull day. Thanks for having me. So we've been obviously talking for months about the CBA negotiations, where things stand. And we've heard during that time from players that they just have not felt confident about the progression of negotiations. Obviously, they felt confident enough to agree to 2 extensions, which can serve as an indication that things are progressing. But even after those extensions have been agreed to, we've heard players use words like disheartening or, characterize things as still being at odds when it comes to the financial terms of the proposals. So I think as things currently stand, with the union now voting on a strike authorization, it really speaks to their preparation. This does not mean that a strike is immediate. This does not mean that a strike is imminent. It just means that the union now has the right to implement a strike, call a strike, if and when they feel necessary. And so, again, not to get ahead of ourselves, this is just a required step in the process and being prepared to implement a work stoppage.
And all the more pressure on that January 9th deadline, which, as you've said before, they could extend this or come to terms on a new deal. I guess where is I know you've reported in the past that the players are not happy with the current offer from the league. Where are we right now with that current offer? What have they sort of offered?
Yeah, so what I learned yesterday is that the WNBA has made a more recent proposal that includes a max salary above $1.3 million. The average salary would be more than $530,000, and the minimum would be more than $250,000. Now, that, to my understanding, is with the revenue sharing incorporated within that salary structure. So what we still don't know at this stage, as far as the most recent proposal from the WNBA goes, is whether or not that revenue sharing percentage has increased. What we also know is that the previous proposal from the WNBA, which came in at the within the first week of the month, that the union countered, requesting closer to 30% of the entire league revenue. So whether or not the WNBA has increased that percentage to get closer to what the union has proposed, it still remains to be seen.
And this, of course, comes on the heels of Adam Silver giving a press conference before the NBA Cup this week, and he was asked about the WNBA negotiations, and he said, listen, if they need me to help out in any way, I'm here. Well, that clearly, the players heard that, because Brianna Stewart was just asked about that the other day, and she said she would welcome Adam Silver. Do you actually think Adam Silver would come and help the negotiations if he needed to be there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Adam Silver has, exemplified his involvement in the WNBA. We've heard from players about their relationship with him, and we've also heard him speak about, his involvement in ensuring the success of the WNBA. And we, ultimately know that Adam Silver is the boss of Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. So if necessary to get this deal done, yes, I believe Adam Silver would be willing to come to the bargaining table. I don't think those were empty words by any means. And I think to hear someone from the executive committee like Brianna Stewart say that they would welcome Adam Silver's presence, I think that really speaks to the state of negotiations. If players are feeling like progress isn't being made, to welcome in the support from the NBA commissioner, again, reiterates their belief that progress isn't being made, to Breanna Stewart's point. I mean, she said that earlier this week when addressing the media down in Miami, where she'll make her debut for season 2 of Unrivaled. So again, I don't think Adam Silver's words are empty by any means. And I don't think Breanna Stewart would be saying that the union would welcome his presence if they also didn't feel it was necessary.
Let's change to another topic within the WNBA that we've discussed at length for months, and that is potential expansion or even relocation. And one of those questions has always been the future of the Connecticut Sun. There's been theories out there, maybe they could have gone to Boston or a bunch of other places. You've reported well in the past that the Houston Rockets ownership group could be a potential landing spot for them to get the Connecticut Sun and relocate that team to Houston, which, by the way, the Houston Comets were one of the very first teams in the WNBA and one of the biggest legendary teams out there. Now there is a report from ESPN that maybe that could happen.
Yes, I can confirm ESPN's report that the Connecticut Sun and the Houston Rockets are continuing conversations about the possibility of the Sun being sold to Rockets ownership group and relocated to Houston. Now, I think there are so many details surrounding how this happened, how we got here, and I think the biggest overarching message has always been from the league: we control relocation. You do not control relocation as an individual team. And what we're seeing is the sale of the Sun now, that sale of the Sun to a preferred destination like the Houston Rockets kind of come to fruition, and that these discussions have been continuing under the surface, even though, at the top, it's appeared like things have settled down.
Yes, so if in your mind, you think that this potentially is going to be the landing spot for Connecticut?
I mean, all signs point to that being the case, and they have pointed to that being the case, quite frankly. I mean, going back to the beginning of the year when it became known that the Connecticut Sun were pursuing a sale, the league got involved quite early and initially attempted to facilitate a sale to the Cleveland ownership group. And ultimately, when that didn't happen, Cleveland, Philly, and Detroit were announced as the expansion teams, leaving out Houston, which again emphasizes that Houston has always been on the table and a desired landing spot, whether it be via expansion or, again, through this sale.
Our women's sports reporter, Annie Costabile, great reporting as always, Annie. Thank you so much. And stay with us. More Front Office Sports today, right after this quick break. Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. I'm Baker Machado, and today's episode is brought to you by the Apple Sports app, the fast and simple way to follow the games you care about. And with real-time scores, live stats, play-by-play, and betting odds, Apple Sports gives you everything you need and none of the clutter. And you can personalize the app with your favorite teams and leagues, track matchups with live activities, and get instant updates on your iPhone lock screen or your Apple Watch. That as the battle for the NFL playoff spots continue to heat up, Apple Sports keeps you locked in on divisional races and wildcard pushes with scores, stats, and standings, along with college football, the NBA, and so much more. So joining me now to chat what we're watching is FOS producer John Shames. John, good to see you, my man. How are you?
Good to see you too, man. We have quite a packed weekend here. Thank God we have the Apple Sports app to help us navigate this crazy weekend of college football, baby.
Absolutely. The college football playoff starts today, this Friday. And let's start with the first game. You got number 9 Alabama at 10-3 taking on number 8 Oklahoma at 10-2. That game at 8 p.m. Eastern time on ABC and ESPN. And Shames, I'd have to think this seems like the most evenly matched of the first round college football playoff games.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 9 versus number 8 here, Baker. And by the way, there's a history of these franchises too, or I should say these teams too, playing each other this season. Oklahoma, a big comeback win at the end there last time they faced. So it's going to be a great first matchup, build some intrigue. You got 2 blue blood programs, SEC rivalry here.
So that's the only one on Friday, but a ton of football happening on Saturday. We've got number 10 Miami at 10-2, taking on number 7 Texas A&M at 11-1. That game at noon Eastern time on ABC and ESPN. They're actually calling this, James, the Notre Dame Bowl because either one of these teams could have been Notre Dame.
Yeah, it could have, but it was not, Baker. So let's focus on the teams that are actually here, right? And by the way, there are big stakes for this matchup, I think, regardless. For the Miami side, as you said, a lot of debate still about whether or not Notre Dame should have made it in over the Canes there. And then for Texas A&M, haven't really played any elite SEC powerhouses this season outside of Texas, who they lost to, didn't play a Georgia or, someone at that caliber. So this is kind of their moment where they need to show up in a big way and show people, hey, we were an 11-0 team for a reason. We are at the top of this conference here. So it should be, high stakes on both sides.
All right, and then we got the other two games. These ones are the ones where you got these group of 5 schools that are in here. The first one, number 11, Tulane at number 6, Ole Miss. We should note one of these teams is keeping their coach for the college football playoff game before he goes to Miami. That would be Tulane's John Sumrall. Ole Miss, no Lane Kiffin in this one. That game, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. But it's going to be on TNT and HBO Max. What do you think of this matchup?
Well, Baker, last time these two teams played earlier in the season, yes, it was a September matchup. 45-10 was the final score there. Ole Miss absolutely steamrolled Tulane. Yes, it was with Lane Kiffin, but I still think we're going to probably see a similar result here, Baker. Tulane, though, the thing is they're playing with some house money right now. I don't think anybody's really expecting them, to come out with a victory here. So can they keep it close? Can they play freely? I think that's going to be, kind of create the intrigue around this matchup.
All right, and the last one, a lot of people didn't think James Madison, the 12th seed, would get in here at 12-1. They're playing number 5 Oregon, who's 11-1. That's the nightcap at 7:30 p.m. That is on TNT and HBO Max. I mean, this one on paper, you would think Oregon, with their one loss against, by the way, Indiana, the number 1 team in the country, you would think Oregon might steamroll them here, but I don't think you're on that page.
Look, I think there's some football reasons why it could be a little bit closer. Notably, JMU has an elite run defense here that we're going to be focusing on and see if they can control the trenches for this game here. But the thing is, Baker, if history, is any indication of what's to come here, Oregon has not lost a game to a non-Power 5 conference opponent since 2017, Baker.
You were in diapers.
Yeah. Okay. Come on. But I mean, look, and by the way, that was a team that was 7-6. It's a totally different look here. This is the Dan Lanning Ducks. They're well coached. They got a good guy leading them. So I think this has the potential to maybe get ugly, Baker.
By the way, that's not the only football that we got on Saturday. There are 2 NFL games. We got the Eagles at the Commanders. That's at 5 p.m. Eastern on Fox. You would have thought early on in the season that would have been a good matchup, but obviously a lot of injuries have impacted the Commanders. But you got the nightcap, which is an NFC North showdown. Packers-Bears, 8:20 p.m. Eastern time on Fox. The winner of that one is crazy. Likely going to win the NFC North. It's crazy how the playoffs work in the NFC. You could either be the 3rd or 4th seed and win that division or not even make the playoffs.
It is crazy. It's the toughest division in football. And Baker, it's only getting, the parity is only increasing now, I think, with the Bears playing so well and with Micah Parsons going down for the season and potentially part of next season too. Looked like the Packers were kind of walking away with this for a while, but, as you said here, a lot can change in one game here.
Really big weekend ahead. And of course, we got the Sunday night football game, 8:20 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock, Patriots and Ravens. That one's going to be exciting as well. Shames, thank you so much for joining us. This segment, by the way, presented by the Apple Sports app. You can download it free at the App Store, and you can stay locked in on every single game. And that's going to do it for this edition of Front Office Sports Today. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll recap all of this for you on Monday. We'll see you then.